Welcome to Breaking the Cycle, where we get deep into the patterns that keep us stuck and discover the tools to break free. Whether it's binge eating, emotional eating, struggles, self-doubt, we're here to explore the root causes, challenge the status quo, and pave the way for lasting transformation. I'm Noona Nafousi, your host, coach, and guide, and I'm here to help you take back control and create a life that truly reflects your worth. Hi everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to be joined by a lovely friend and an expert in what she does. She is a brain trainer. Now you must be thinking, Natasha, in emotional eating, why are we focusing on the brain? Because it matters. If you know, I've said it before and I'll say it again, the way we do one thing is the way we do everything. So we're going to be talking a lot about some hot topics today on why you feel stuck, the things that go through us when we know what we need to do but can't really do it. So Noona Nafousi is going to be taking us through all of that today. Thank you, Noona, for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and honored.
Absolute pleasure. And I follow you, I watch your work, I read your captioning, and I can resonate with it every day. But I think people bypass these things on a daily basis. And I want to get right into it, and understand something. Like, let's start with self-sabotage. Oh, right over there. It's such a hot topic. People say, I'm self-sabotaging myself. So if you can just give us what it is, why people do it, why do you think people continue to do it even if they know better?
I love this topic. And self-sabotage for me is when we know what we're meant to do and we don't do it.
Yeah.
And so what I have found with self-sabotage is that there are times when we will not address one part of us. So for me, I could not address when I had children. I put on quite a lot of weight. I had 2 children in 2 years, and I could not address the fact that I was really unhappy with my weight. I couldn't address it. I didn't want to address it. So that showed up in other areas where I was over drinking when I was drinking on the weekends, binge drinking. My confidence went really low. I had zero boundaries at work. I was allowing my boss to speak to me really rudely. And so I was really self-sabotaging my career, self-sabotaging my health. I wasn't present with the kids, not because of that, but because I wasn't addressing another side. And this is what happens with our brain. Our brain is always trying to protect us, and our ego will try to protect us. So when we don't address something, our emotions, how we feel about ourselves, our beliefs, even sometimes beliefs that don't belong to us, beliefs that we've picked up from our childhood, generational trauma that we've taken on, essentially let's call them our shadows.
Yeah.
And a lot of people fight away from them. They think that shadows is something to be scared of. Really, the way I deal with shadows is to embrace them, because they have tried to protect you. And the more you shine the light on it, the less self-sabotage will come in other areas of your life.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a great way to put it. I know when you've done the work yourself, you know how the relief you feel and how much better your life is on the other side. But in the beginning, it's scary. It's so scary because you don't want to face your fears. You don't want to expose that part of your life. And so, sometimes individuals don't even know why they're doing it. So if someone is starting from fresh, so say someone like yourself in that position where you were allowing your boss to talk to you rudely, right? You were telling yourself, this is okay, this is acceptable. How were you able to really pinpoint that and say, enough is enough?
Do you know what? I didn't. At that time, I didn't. And I wish I did. I think I ended up getting made redundant. He ended up stealing money from me, not giving me my gratuity during COVID. So I didn't. But what I wish I knew what I knew now is there's this really amazing tip that I give to my clients is write down everything that you're worried about. Like, what are you worried about? And say, I'm worried. So at the time, for me, it would have been, I'm worried that I've put on a lot of weight and I don't look like me anymore. And I love that. And start loving what you're worried about, because then you're not running away from it. I'm worried that my boss doesn't respect me, and I love that. Because when you start loving what you're worried about, you're shining the light on it.
Yeah.
And you're not worried. So one tip that I would say is write down everything that you're worried about and say, and I love that. That's number one. Number two, I would say, write down everything that you're saying to yourself. And if I did, it would have been, I'm not good enough. I'm so ugly. Nobody wants to listen to anything I have to say. And I would have been able to see and then write something next to it.
Yeah.
Like as if a friend had said that to me, what would I have said? And then what you do is you start, it's a bit like a brain dump. You know, our brain takes on so much and we never clear it out. And it needs clearing out because it collects. And basically our subconscious is 95% of what controls us. And that 5% that we do have control over, most of us are feeding it rubbish.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
So if we can just clean, so you think your subconscious is a bit like a motherboard that's controlling everything else. If we can be very conscious of what we're putting in there through the 5%, through what we're saying to ourselves, by being kinder to ourselves, by using really positive language and really looking at how we believe, what we believe about ourselves, then we're having a bit more control over the subconscious and start putting it in. And I think that for me has been really, really, really powerful. And I decided 2 years ago that I was going to fall madly, deeply in love with myself. And I'm so kind to myself now. I speak to myself really kindly. And even like I was looking in the mirror the other day and I thought, oh, my neck, I'm getting a bit old. And I just thought, oh my God, no, we don't say that. Like, we just don't do that anymore. It's like become my new normal.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, and I don't know if you've noticed this, is that the kinder I've been to myself, the more I've noticed kindness from other people towards me.
Absolutely.
I'm not rejecting it.
Absolutely. You attract it, right? You're putting it out in the universe and you attract it. And I love that. You know, there's so much beauty in what you said there. Because people often think when we talk about self-sabotage or things of that sort that I will automatically change. If I know better, I'll do better. But there's a process, isn't it? Even you, after knowing that, you still stood in the mirror. You still said, look at my neck, I'm going so old. But it's not that you did not say it, you corrected yourself. And so sometimes I see people going down this spiral, they'll say it or they'll think it and be like, oh, I'm still the old person. I haven't changed. Have you noticed that as well?
I have really noticed that. And I think for me, there's just one thing that one of my coaches said to me, which taught me is like, I'm just not available for that anymore. Because our brain will always start going back to what it knows best when it's stressed, when it's upset. It's natural. So yes, I was like, oh my God, my neck. And I just thought, no, I don't do that anymore. And it is course correcting and you can correct it quite early on. And I think when you create a relationship with yourself where you're really kind and gentle with yourself, yeah, there are times where my brain will want to go there and I'll just bring it back. It's just about, and it's like something I heard from a parenting coach, which I think is similar to for what we do to ourselves, is it's not, say, for example, you lose your temper to your partner or to your child. It's not what you said, it's the repair. How do you repair it? And I think that's for ourselves as well. It's not necessarily what we say, but how do we repair that relationship with ourselves, which I think that is where the gold lies.
Absolutely. And that's so key. That is so key. I want to go back to something that you said, you know, with the weight gain and then the binge drinking, because I could relate to that a lot. I often tell people when I stopped eating, I started drinking. And I noticed that in around the period of 2020 as well, when I lost my job, very similar. My drinking had gone through the roof and I had to, and I rarely drink nowadays because I just don't feel like I'm the best that I can be. But it's like almost of switching one coping mechanism to the other. So I would tell myself, hey, at least I'm not binge eating, right? At least it's not back to that. But I could see these small periods. It wouldn't happen every day, maybe every other week, but I could notice that happening. And so what are we trying to do there? I mean, I know it's a form of numbing out, but as an individual who's self-sabotaging, relying on these outside sources, whether it be food, alcohol, you know, what are we, I guess, running away from?
I think for me and what I see with other people, it is numbing, definitely numbing. I felt so awful about myself, there was a lot of stress. I had 2 young kids. I was at the time the main breadwinner. You know, my husband was just starting his career. I'd completely lost my identity. I felt so awful that the drink just, you know, I'd have a drink on a Friday afternoon, you know, when I'd put the kids to bed and it was just the numbing. And then suddenly it's like 1 wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And then 2. And then when COVID happened, you know, that obviously you've got the stress of the children at home and all of that. And then losing my job, I think it was really numbing. And actually, alcohol is quite grounding.
Yeah.
It kind of pulls you down. You feel quite heavy, don't you? So from energetic, whatever it is point of view, it does pull you down. And the same with food. When you're really full, it pulls you down as well. You're very heavy. And I think when you don't have control over your emotions or how you feel, that grounding can feel quite nice until it goes the other way.
Yeah, absolutely. I say this, I said, having food as comfort or having a glass of wine because it feels good, you've come home from work, is not bad. But the minute it starts getting out of control, when the minute one's not enough, a bottle's not enough, a meal is not enough, that's when you need to start taking action. And, bringing it back to, so I work with tons of very, very successful women who are amazing at what they do in their corporate environment, right? Or at their corporate jobs. But yet sometimes this weight specifically is a factor that they can't wrap their head around. And I noticed this trend again and again and again, and it keeps coming up. And what do you think's happening for that individual as a woman, successful? What's happening in this individual's life that they can bring this amount of success to them and are still growing on the corporate ladder and will do anything and everything to get there, but have not been able to wrap their head around this part of their life?
I think it's really multi-layered. I think one is when you're very successful as a woman, you're a high achiever, you've done so much. Sometimes that weight can be a form of protection. That it's, you're working in quite a male-dominated environment, and especially if you've had some unwanted attention when you were a child or a teenager, or, we've all had that moment where someone's tried to kiss us and we've pulled away. And when you're in a very male-dominant environment, it can be a form of protection. Then you're uncomfortable with your sexiness, with your attractiveness, that you hold that weight. So that could be one. That was definitely for me after I had children. The other thing I think is that there is a form of, you've done it in the corporate world, you're earning all this money, but your self-worth doesn't match your salary package. So how else can I deal with this success and have my self-worth match where I'm at? Because the money is too much. I'm earning a lot of money, but I don't feel as worthy. Imposter syndrome. I know I can carry a bit more weight. So it's definitely a form of protection. Wow. Protection of our self-worth, protection of attraction. And then the other thing is sometimes it can be you're so in control at work that you just don't want to be in control somewhere else. And the other thing is the emotions. Is you are not dealing, and I see this with a lot of really successful women who come and work with me, that they are so successful, but what pushed them to be successful was to push and have all that external validation because they've got no internal validation. And when you don't have internal validation, you're not able to sit with your own emotions, you're not able to be nice to yourself. And so are you really worth having an amazing body? Because a lot of people think that they're scared of failure. Actually, a lot of us are scared of success. So who would you be if you had this amazing salary and also had an amazing body? Could you actually hold being that powerful, being that successful? Can you actually sit with that?
And that's scary.
Yeah, really scary. Well, actually, I can have all of this money, but I'm carrying a bit of weight. So actually, I'm not perfect. The other thing, which I've been working on as well, is who would you be to your family if you were happy and successful and fit and gorgeous? How much is that generation of, if you come from a background where your mum didn't feel good about herself and you grew up in a very stressful environment and you got shouted at a lot and you were told that you needed to do more and more and more, and you didn't grow up in an environment that was relaxed and, really positive, then who are you then if that's what you become? Are you leaving behind your family? Do you even know how that feels? So there's so many layers that come up with it, which I think is fascinating.
Absolutely. And I see some of them when I work with these clients, and, the emotions, they play a huge role. It's like, I see myself doing it at times when I'm really stressed or things are getting thrown my way left, right, and center. I'll tell myself, you know what, let me just work so much right now that I don't have to think about it. And I just dive in deeper and deeper and deeper. But the awareness is there. So I catch myself doing it. But I can now see, as you're explaining it, how easy it would be for someone to say, yeah, I don't have to think that I'm alone. Or I don't have to think that I have no one to go home to. Or I don't have to think that this guy didn't call me back. Or I don't have to think that, I can just dive myself deeper into work. And then that's rewarding me. I can see how that kind of plays out. The part that I really want you to elaborate on, which I found really interesting, was the pay and not matching their self-worth. Because I've seen that come up recently with a very good friend of mine, and it was so interesting to see how she was responding. Bless her, she's an amazing person, but came from a very humble background. No one in her family has made or has been as successful as she is, but the way it's processing for her is not going very well. I mean, luckily she has an amazing coach that's guiding her through it, but what's the disconnect that's happening there for an individual, specifically women?
Yeah, so if you haven't got high self-worth, and we're not taught how to have self-worth as women. You know, men see money as status. So when they earn money, they do tend to feel better about themselves because they're providers, and it means that they can look after their family. So it does actually increase their self-worth. It doesn't for women. When women earn more money, it can really bring up so much, am I worthy? So that can come up. Guilt, but my family had to work so hard and I'm having it too easy, and the self-worth as well. So what it is that if we don't have strong self-worth, and this goes back to our internal validation, we don't feel good about ourselves, that money suddenly starts to become a threat to our own identity. So we can have the money, but can we also be really attractive? We can have the money, but there has to be a give. And this is what I was talking about in the beginning for the shadow and sabotage. It will come up in other areas that are completely unrelated. And this is where you can really sit and start thinking like, how am I actually feeling about myself? Well, I feel stressed most of the day. And then you can do exercises like just listening to yourself, like, where do I feel the stress in my body? It's this, just breathing into it. That will increase your self-worth because you're just listening to yourself. Or say, I'm really worried I might earn all this money and lose it. And then you can go back to that exercise that I said, like, I'm really worried that I might earn all this money and lose it. And I love that about myself. You know, but we're just not taught how to manage our emotions, how to manage our self-worth. And so then suddenly there's a mismatch, and where we lack in one place, it will shine light on something else.
Yeah.
Even though they seem completely unrelated, they're always related.
Absolutely. I've definitely experienced that. And what are some of the early signs that someone, you've worked so hard, you've got the promotion, you said, yeah, that's it. Like, this is the salary I've always wanted for myself. And now it's starting, right? It's starting to go downhill. You're coming home from work, you're ordering 3-4 pizzas. Yes, you're making the money. So what are some of the early signs that people can kind of pick out on and say, ooh, this is going downhill for me?
One is, can you hold large sums of money in your bank account? Because then there's an identity shift. I'm someone who can earn this money, but then we spend it really quickly. So one thing, and I say this because I had that as well when I was in my 30s, is that when I earn a lot of money, I would always pay for everyone when we went out for dinner. You know, there could be a dinner of like 6 or 7 people. Everyone was perfectly capable of paying for themselves and splitting the bill. But I'd say, no, this is on me. And it looked like I was being really generous, but actually I probably, when looking back now with hindsight, I probably had such low self-worth I couldn't hold, because I was earning, quite a huge amount of money for my age and for what I was doing, that I probably needed to feel like, let me just spend it. So being overly generous, right. Shopping too much, although that's also quite layered. It could be for so many other reasons, but spending, giving money away. So just physically not being able to handle loads of money in your bank account.
Yeah, I can so relate to that. I remember when I first started making money, doing what I do, I would tell myself, how are you making more than you did a few months ago and you still have no money in your bank account?
Yeah.
And it made absolutely no sense to me. And that whole analogy, okay, Natasha, you're starting to make money. You can cut yourself a salary now. Why is there no money in your bank account? And so I started doing exactly as you suggested. I started tracking my steps and writing things down. I couldn't hold money. I was so uncomfortable. We go back in time, and I sat with my therapist and we talked about this. We go back in time, and I've come from a very scarce background where school fees wouldn't get paid on time. There were times they would take me out of the classroom because my parents didn't pay the school fees on time, or, things would happen. We'd have to move because couldn't afford things. So, and I've seen it growing up with my parents as well. And then there were times that they did really well and even they couldn't hold on to it. So I didn't want to be a byproduct of that. And I noticed that I would not be able to hold, and it would be something would come in my head and say, I need to buy this and I need to buy it now. It needs to happen now. But yeah, it's crazy how that just comes and takes over.
And so much of that as well is having a regulated nervous system around money. And so one of the things that my coach taught me was to really look at imagining money coming into your bank account and adding a zero and seeing like monthly, say for example, it's 10,000. Imagine that you're earning 100,000 a month. And I was like, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And so it was just literally just using, somatic work, and because it's a physical body reaction, and it's just thinking like, can I do 20? Breathing, tapping your chest, I can do 20, I can do 20. Can I do 25? Yep, I can do that. And then you notice that the more you can sit with money, the more you attract.
Yeah.
Because you subconsciously, I don't know if you notice this with work, but you subconsciously don't get back to someone, or don't raise your prices, or somebody doesn't pay and don't chase them straight away. You wait. You do all of these things as an entrepreneur and then it is just the physical sensation of being able to sit with money and hold it.
Oh my God, I can relate in so many. This is going to sound so self-sabotaging, but I have to share it. I would go through periods where I'd have an amazing discovery call with someone. They were ready. They would have signed up on the spot, and I'd tell them, I'll send you the proposal and everything in 24 hours, and I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I would not.
Yeah.
I would physically be sitting on my couch, the template's ready, and I would not send it. And thoughts would go in my head, Natasha, why are you doing this? You could really do with that money. You could really help this person out, Why are you doing this? I couldn't. I was frozen.
Yeah.
And it's to think about that now, it's actually very scary. But I'm sure people listening, they must feel that way. They must know what's better to do, but not able to do it, either from trauma in the past, money trauma in the past, or things of that sort. And so...
Sorry to interrupt. The interesting thing is you're an entrepreneur, right? So you're doing that for yourself. But when you're working for a business and for your clients who come to you who are getting that monthly, they don't have the option so it's coming in. So then the self-sabotage shows up in different ways and just take it. Like literally it's like money, like water through your hands.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's so fascinating. And it is all our body, all our emotions, and all to do with our thoughts. It's just incredible.
And so when this person goes up, because I really, we are surrounded by some successful women, right? And especially in Dubai, there's tons of us here, but yet you see the ones that know how to invest, know how to save, and then you see the ones that either spend frivolously, don't know where to do. And I can relate to either or because I've been on both ends of the spectrum. How would this individual be able to seek help or understand that something's wrong with me, especially where spending is glorified here. Buying a new bag, buying a new pair of shoes, you can earn it. You have the title, do it. How can that individual then come to terms with, I don't think this is going the right way, when something of that sort is so glorified, so that they can really feel grounded, let's say?
Yeah. I think the first thing really is to really check in with themselves. So for example, now when I spend, I just take a minute. Like, do I really want it? Is this going to bring me joy? Why am I doing this? So, for example, when I was paying for everyone, I wouldn't even think. It was so instinctive. I'll just do it. That normally comes from a place of lack. Whereas now, say, for example, if I want to do something like that, I'll really sit back and think, why am I doing it? Am I doing it because I want to, or am I doing it? So it's really getting so truthfully honest with yourself. And this is one of the hardest things to do, is to be honest with yourself, because most of the time the truth is so scary. And it's more scary than the self-sabotaging behavior. Because the truth is, back me then was, I really didn't like myself very much. That's a really scary truth when you admit that to yourself, because so what do I do now? And so I think just baby steps. But how do you feel when you spend money as well? Because sometimes what I'd do is I'd pay for this meal, which using that as an example now, running with it. I'd pay for the meal, and straight afterwards, I think, why did I do that? Like the bill would come and it would be like £250 and I'd pay it. And then afterwards I'd think, why did I do that?
Yeah.
It's straight away. So you could start keeping a journal. How do you feel after each payment you're making? And that could be a sign. But I do think all of this goes back to check. Your body knows more than your own brain. And so if you can tap into how your body feels when you're spending it, your body will be able to tell. So do a body check before, like, does this feel good, or is it coming from my mind? If the spending's coming from your head, you know it's coming from ego. If it's coming from a full, like, oh my God, this is going to feel so good when I do it, then you know it's more of a soul nourishing spending, which always feels so much better.
You know, the reason I'm harping so much about spending is because I see it with clients at times, right? They're not binge eating anymore. They're feeling really good about themselves. But all of a sudden, the credit card bills, statements are racking up, you know, and I always bring this up in conversation. I'll be like, watch your spending, you know, because what's actually happening there, and please correct me if I'm wrong, what I've seen is they're still not getting to the unmet need. They're still not addressing the real root cause, the emotion that they're experiencing, whether it be guilt, neglect, I don't like myself, I don't like how my body looks, you know, things of that sort. But if I spend it, I'm still getting that dopamine hit. It's not food, so then I'm still maintaining my figure, and then kind of spirals out from there. And so, you know, I think it's so important for us to see that just because you switch from one coping mechanism to another doesn't make you a changed person.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's something that happens quite a lot, right?
Yeah.
And do you see that? Do you
I
see
do.
when, especially when you work with the women that you do, and men as well, that you do work with men
Yeah,
as
I
well,
work with
right?
men too.
And so do you see them, especially in the level of people that you work with, how do they move from one coping mechanism to another?
Really interesting, actually. What I found is that, say, for example, they are... So I had one client who came to me who felt like she was cursed with money. So we did some work together and she ended up getting a promotion and she got a great job. And suddenly her lack got transferred from money to time. So she started always feeling like she never had time. And she was, you know, constantly burnt out. And when I sat down with her, we went through the thought process. I said, you do realize you've swapped your lack of money for suddenly your lack of time? She was like, oh my God. And noticed that the lack was still there. So the work goes deeper. And so we had to go a little bit deeper on something else. And I think we were talking about this before we started recording. It's like Pandora's box. Mm-hmm. Once you open it, it never ends. And there's always a level to go deeper. And the lesson will stop repeating once it's been learned.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Fully, deeply learn. And it's not a pretty journey. I say to my clients, like, working with me isn't particularly going to feel fun, like maybe towards the end. But in the beginning, it feels very raw because we're getting to the crux of something that you haven't wanted to see for a lifetime.
Yeah. Do you get a lot of reluctance when you're trying to get to the core of it?
I do in the beginning, and I think the first thing for me is to get them to, first I'll assess the client, like how deep can I go and how quickly. And when I do get reluctant, I will kind of massage around. But what I can do is put their ego to one side, because there's a lot of inner conflict that, like, I really want to say this, but I don't want her to think that I'm, you know, so they'll say something and I could tell because they'll look and be like, oh, I felt like my mum always used to be like this. And then look at me and I'd say, okay, good. I'm like, what else happened? And then they'll say, and I'm like, good. Yep, I can really see that and I can feel that for you. And then they'll start. Most people are desperate to let it out. They really are. So I think the most important thing is creating a safe space for them. And because I've done so much work and I can hold some pretty deep emotions in myself, I'm really comfortable with holding my clients' emotions. And I think you can feel that when you start working with people and you can tell. And I think, you know, before, for a long time, I couldn't hold my anger. So if I felt like a client might be angry, if I had to say something and they would get angry, then I would hold back in the beginning when I first started in my first year, but then that's not really deep. I wasn't going as deep. Whereas because I've really sat with my anger and I can feel my full rage, there's no holding back. I can hold that for my clients and not judge them at all. So I think that you have to do that as a coach. You've got to really deeply feel your own emotions, and then the clients will see, can I go this far? Can I go this far? And then with time they'll go. But I'd say most people now, we can go quite deep quite quickly.
Yeah.
Because I know how to touch the
Yeah.
touch the right button.
Absolutely. I mean, it's all about that safe space, right? If they
Yeah.
don't feel like they can relate or share. I was just speaking about this yesterday with a friend, and we were talking about, and she's in a similar space as well. And she said, it's so important to create that safety for them right from the first call, right from
Yeah.
the first interaction, that they feel that the entire world might not understand them, but you can.
Yeah.
And so I think that's like a sense of peace, a sense of calmness that they almost look forward to come seeing you. Something else that always comes up, and I would love, love, love to get your take on this, is confidence, in particular body confidence. And something I see across women, again, very successful women that you interact with and deal with on a daily basis, is I'm not ready to show up because I don't have the body as yet. I don't want to show up because I don't have the body as yet. And I see this all the time. One of the biggest reasons why people book calls in with me is in 4 weeks, I have a big award ceremony coming up and I need to look my best. Till then, I'm just going to not show up for any event. And I truly believe that you need to enjoy the process, because who says that once you're done, once you're there, that a red carpet's going to get laid out for you, right? And if anything, it goes the other way. That's what happened for me. And so I kind of want to understand why, number one, I get it in a way, but I think people listening, and I'm sure there's people listening that's feeling like, I feel insecure. I don't want to show up. Why is this happening to them? And secondly, how can they get past it? Because waiting towards the end, that's not the answer.
Yeah, I love this question. And I know because this was me as well. And I think I don't have anything to wear. It's also just an excuse. Or I will ask for my promotion once I've lost weight. It's easier to blame the weight than to blame the fact that you're still playing small. And if you do want to play small in your career and you're slowly moving up, it's really easy to blame the weight. Well, I won't go to this award, and also when women put on weight, they don't dress themselves sexily. They don't invest in their clothes. And that's another reason. And they'll use it as an excuse because of their weight, but actually it's because they've lost their confidence. It is just an excuse, number one. And what I think as well is that I think some of the most magnetic, attractive women aren't the ones who are pictured on the magazine, typical. They are the ones who are owning any body shape they've got. And we all have seen women like this who walk into a room and they're owning it. And those are probably the women who the weight tends to fall off quicker because they don't make their weight mean anything about them. And I think this really comes back when I talk about confidence a lot with my client. It's the stories that we're telling ourselves. And it's just a cover up for so many other stuff. Again, it's the ego, it's trying to protect us. But most people think I'm overweight, so I'm not loved.
Yeah, absolutely. It goes back down to when I was younger, everyone was always like, you need to lose weight. And they used to tell my mom, she needs to lose weight. She has such a pretty face, she needs to lose weight. But there was this one lady, my mom's friend, she had come down from the States. And I would hate seeing my parents' friends because I know my weight would always be a topic of conversation. And I remember her words still today. And my mom said, oh, this is my daughter, Natasha. I know she's really overweight. Like, that's just how they would introduce me. And once my mom left, she came to me and she said, don't let the weight be who you are. She's like, think about Queen Latifah. Look at how Queen Latifah walks into a room, right? Queen Latifah was a plus-size woman. Look at the way she owns the room. And for the first time in my life, I was allowed to look at this weight that I was holding in a very different way. And it was like, is this lady for real? And she said, just think about how confident she is. And so then I got so obsessed with Queen Latifah. And I think people feel that they're not worthy, that they shouldn't own a room like Queen Latifah does, and many other plus-size women do. I mean, if anything, you see it on social media now. And so if someone is there and they're in that position and they stop dressing up, because I see that always. You'll say, oh, I have all these lovely clothes in my closet. I'll wear them once I lose weight. How can they make that switch, where do they start? Because yes, you will lose weight. Yes, you can get there. It's a journey. You've been on it. I've been on it. But why are you penalizing yourself now? And so where does that individual pick up with her self-confidence? Where does she start with her body confidence?
I think it has to start with the mind, how you speak to yourself. Because even if and you see this so often where people will lose weight and they'll put the weight back on because their identity hasn't caught up with who they are. So you have to work on the brain from day one of your thoughts, how you speak to yourself, because only then will your identity change as your body changes. Otherwise, it's the same brain. It's just you've sewn up your mouth or whatever, however you decided to lose weight. And then suddenly it will come back on because you haven't updated the hard drive that is running the show. So it has to be your mind. Also, can I just say that woman, when you're telling the story, I just got goosebumps.
Yeah.
That was, what an amazing woman. She really saw you, huh?
Absolutely. There's very few instances that I remember from my childhood. They're coming back now, but I deleted a lot of it. And that's one that came up very recently. And I just remember the way she looked at me. And I had never looked at the world in those eyes before. I never got the chance to, because everyone's like, well, you can't live in this world if you look the way that you do. And when someone comes and gives you that light, and you're like, wow, I actually can be confident, It was, if it wasn't for her, I would have never thought I can own this in some shape or form.
And you know what she did as well? She allowed you to think of your weight differently.
Absolutely.
She planted the seed that
absolutely
you can, and you ran with it,
Yeah.
And I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. It was so mesmerizing for me. It was in that moment, I felt so seen. I felt so seen for the first time in a very, very long time. As I said, I just hated. It was not a topic of conversation. And so when I speak to clients, it's her that I try to create that feeling of that, you are so good the way you are right now. You are amazing the way you are right now. And it's so hard to believe, because when you wake up in the morning, you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, no, I'm disgusting. I hide away from the mirror, right? And I'm with you. It's with the mind. It's absolutely. So you start saying good things to yourself. What about showing up? How can they start showing up? What do they say to themselves so that they can progress just a little bit forward, even if they are working on weight loss?
For me, it was starting to learn. The first thing I would do, and if someone was a client coming to me, I'd say write themselves a love story, a love letter.
I love that.
Like, how often have we, and especially people who've got low self-confidence, who are struggling with their weight, write yourself a love letter. Write yourself one from love and one from fear. And then you will be able to know, and you can write it, say, in 5 years' time, like that gives you enough time to pretend that you do. And then the fear is what happens if nothing changes, then it all stays the same in 5 years' time. And then suddenly what happens is you'll start to recognize the voices in your head. Is that a voice from fear or is that a voice from love? And then you get a choice, because most of the time we don't even know what the voice is in our head. So that would be my first tip. Second, I think to build your confidence and to feel better about yourself, most of the time we have lost our confidence because we've lost trust with ourselves. And so say, for example, if I asked you to lend me some money and I never paid you back, and then I came back and asked you to lend me more money, highly unlikely you would lend me more money because you wouldn't trust me anymore. We become our own worst lenders because we say that we're going to do something and we don't. We say that, today I'm going to do this and we don't. So we are constantly, especially if we're people pleasers, we'll please everyone else and then scrap our plans. So then people think like, oh, self-love, have a bath. I'm like, self-love, do what you say you're going to do. Honor your word to yourself. And once you've created more of a trust relationship with yourself, that's where confidence comes in. And the other thing I would say is dress well.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that.
You don't have to wear really baggy clothes.
Yeah.
Most people, and me included, when I was, really overweight, I could still dress well. I could still put on, nice makeup. You still look and you feel different when you wear some nice clothes. So just invest in a capsule wardrobe, clear out anything that you don't feel. Now I have a rule. If I don't feel like a CEO in it, I'm not wearing it. Even my pajamas. I had my brother-in-law stay in the other day, and he was like, your pajama game is strong. I was like, I'm really honoring this promise that I made. I want to feel good even when I'm going to bed.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear
Such an
you.
important thing.
But see, this is, and I'm so happy you said that, because why? Why do you have to show up in these monotone colors every single day, or not show up in any, just a gray suit or 2 or 3 pants because I'm not worthy? And that goes back to exactly what you said, your self-worth. The whole trust element, I see that all the time. And I actually say the exact same thing to my clients. I tell them, every time you say you're going to start a diet on Monday and you don't do it, and you say, I'll start again next week, you lose a little bit of trust with yourselves. And so, it's about really building that trust. And I'm so glad you said self-love is not taking a bath and hugging yourself. It's about doing what you say you're going to do, which is so important. And I think this is where it gets misconstrued in social media, where, yes, it's about loving yourself, but that is the best form of self-love, respecting yourself, saying what you're going to do. And but God, I could go on and on that topic forever. Is there statements that they can say, affirmations that they can use? Do you believe affirmations work for an individual?
I do. And I think as you were speaking, the thing that came to me was that, it's thinking like, I've got this, I can do this. And when you trust yourself, when you do what you say you're going to do, when you're put in difficult situations, when you've got your own back, suddenly you're like, in whatever situation you're in, you're like, I can do it. Yeah. I can do it. I've got it. I think for me, one of the affirmations that I use a lot, and I think I might have got this from Maria Pierce, was every day in every way, my life gets better. And I think for me, it's really just really saying to myself, like when I look in the mirror, I make sure that I say I look beautiful. There's also another exercise that you can look in your left eye and your right eye in the mirror, because they access different parts of your brain. And they say if you look through your left eye, you're looking through your soul. Wow. Apparently that's what I've heard. And it's looking in your pupil in the mirror and just saying, I love you.
Wow.
I love you.
Such a beautiful exercise.
It's so hard.
It is. It is. As you're speaking, I'm thinking to myself, which eye do you look? And it's usually the right.
Yeah.
I'm usually looking at myself from the right eye. Okay, everything looks good. Let's go.
Yeah.
But I'm going to try that today.
Yeah, try the left. And one thing I couldn't do for a long time is look in the mirror and appreciate my body. Like you were saying, like for me, I would just look at it and be like, so disgusting. Yeah. Like, even though my husband was still like, oh, you're so gorgeous, you look, and I still had my waist, I still, and I just birthed children. There was nothing per se wrong. But now I'm just, and along the journey as well, not just since I've lost weight, but along the journey, I'm so strict. And use affirmations that feel good for you, because everyone has their own. Yeah. People come out and say stuff and then people take them on. You have to say something that actually feels good in your body. Try them on, see how does your body react to them. But for me, it's just about just catching myself.
Yeah, in the moment.
Yeah.
You touched on something which is the perfect segue of what I wanted to talk about as well, which is people pleasing.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a recovering people pleaser.
Me too.
And, I have bent over backwards and sideways and underneath and on top. I would be so proud of the people pleaser I was that I would say, everyone loves me. Everyone, and I would have this image in my head that if I ever died, God forbid, there would be so many people at my funeral, and that used to make my day. That would be the opposite now. I'd probably have 5 people at my funeral. But, I want to really dive into this topic of people pleasing. I see it with clients a lot. I'm sure you see it as well. Please dive into people pleasing for us, where it stems from, and how can we pinpoint that I am a people pleaser?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started learning about people pleasing, it kind of blew my mind, because I also was a real people pleaser. I did everything for everyone. Like you, I thought everyone will at my funeral just be like, she's such a nice person. I really don't want people to call me nice anymore. Yeah. And this is, God, we could have a whole episode about this, but people pleasing essentially is a form of control. Yeah. Which when I found that out, I just thought, I rejected that. And it really made me quite angry. I was really triggered by that. I was like, what do you mean? I'm actually being nice. But what it is that I have such a low opinion of myself. So I am going to control or try and control your opinion of me by doing everything for you so you can say that I'm really nice. And it blew my mind. And then also what I found out is that when you're a people pleaser, your self-worth is low. Goes back to your self-worth. So you will constantly do things for other people for them to say, again, control their opinion of you. But the problem is, if you think of it like a well, no matter how much water you put on that well, and think of the water as thank yous, it will never fill up. And that's why a lot of people pleasers, as I was, I don't know if you felt this as well, we got very resentful. Like, do you know how much I had to sacrifice of myself to go out and do something for you? And the thank you's never enough, even if they say thank you, but they didn't say it in a nice way, but they didn't do it in this way. And so a lot of people who are people pleasers are quite resentful because the gap between how they feel about themselves to what they expect from other people is so large, and that gap is filled with resentment. And, that's not good for our health. It's not good for our health image. And so with people pleasing, the way to start for me was to really look at, if I did something for you, the way I knew it was people pleasing is that I wanted you to say thank you. And that thank you really meant something to me. Now, if I do something for someone, I don't expect a thank you because I genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, want to do it. So, if I'm looking for anything, I know it's coming from people pleasing, I won't do it. That's first, it's just identifying it, because then you've got the whole another difficulty of actually saying no and the guilt. And that's really difficult. But first, just be aware. But then you get the guilt and the...
Yeah, I think that's something, I want to touch base on, because people pleasing comes up. I tell people, and for me initially, I went the complete opposite. I went from people pleasing to waking up one day and say, I've had enough. And so then no became my favorite word. No. And that wasn't very healthy either, because I'd said a few more no's than I should have.
I love that.
So, I really did.
No to the world.
Yeah, I love it. And that's it. Do you want to come to the grocery store? No. They're like, but you need groceries. No, I'm not doing it. It'd be something of that sort. But I feel like now I have a healthy balance. So if someone's starting out, they are listening to this and they're like, oh my God, that is me. I say yes to everyone. And then, when we combine people pleasing with emotional eating, I always tell people it's a form of, you're saying yes to everyone else. And then the only person that says yes to you is food. Food is the one that pleases you while you're pleasing everyone else. And so if they wake up one day and they've realized, wow, what Noona said and what Nafousi said, I'm definitely a people pleaser. Where do they start? What does that next week or next 10 days look like for them? Because you're so right, the guilt's going to be there. How should they be sitting with that guilt? Should they be saying no's as often as I did? I don't think that's the right strategy, but what are your thoughts on that?
The first thing I would do, I think awareness. I think awareness solves half of every problem and everything that we do with ourselves. So first of all, just keep a track. How many times am I saying yes when I mean no? That's number one. Number two, which really helped me, was that every time I say yes to someone, say, for example, someone would say to me, can you give me a lift? And I couldn't. And I would say yes, and I would go out of my way. People generally do like to help other people out. And every time I said yes, I was taking away the opportunity for someone else to be helpful to someone. So rather than me feeling guilty that I'm saying no, the way my mind did it is that, well, if I say no, they've got an opportunity to ask someone else, and someone else gets that good dopamine hit of saying yes. So that's another way, is that I don't have to do everything for everyone, because there are other people who are totally capable, and they can also get the feeling of helping out. The other thing was that what I was thought as well is that most of the time I wasn't actually being authentic. So I would say yes, and then in my mind think, I can't believe you've just asked me. You're so selfish. Now, what kind of friendship is that? Or what kind of relationship am I creating with the people in my life? This resentment, they can then feel the resentment. There's no authenticity. So now I just use sentences like, can I let you know later? Can I let you know closer to the time? And, especially with things when I'm meeting up with people, or if they say, in a month, can you book this? And I'm like, I'll let you know. Because in a month's time, the way my energy works, I don't know if you've done human design, but the way my human design is, I've learned that I have to see how I feel. So I will then change the way I communicate and say, can I just let you know closer to the time? And most people are like, yeah, sure.
That's really, really beautiful. You know, I used to have a friend that always say, I'll say, oh, can we go for dinner here? And she's like, Natasha, don't. She had very, very good boundaries. And while at that time I resented her, now I have a lot of respect for her because I was like, she knew exactly what she wanted. She put the boundary down with me. She also said, it's not that I'm saying no to you, just ask me the day before because I'll be more clear minded and I'll be able to let you know if I can come. And I think about that conversation now, and I was thinking about it while you were speaking. I was like, my God, she did it the right way. And I love what you said, you know, you're not saying no immediately, which a lot of people struggle with. They've not said no for months, years, weeks. And it's hard saying no to people that you've always said yes to, right? So this is the phenomena I want to open up with you. If you've said yes to someone for so long, the other person's aware of it as yet. I'll come to Noona, I'll come to Natasha, she'll say yes. I've gone to her before. So now how do we start? Now we've realized it, we're aware of it, and we want to say no to this person because we understand that this person is a taker. And as we know, as takers, they'll never stop. How do we start changing the dynamics there a little bit?
I think it is changing the language, like you said. It's using gentler language, like, oh, I'm so sorry. And especially with people pleasers, I'm not one of these people who, I don't tend to speak harshly. I'm just not. I'm quite kind in my communication. And so I would still be like, I'm so sorry, I can't. You know, is there a way that you can find something else? And if they come back quite strong, then I might respond more strongly. But my initial is always in a kind and gentle way. But the other thing that I have noticed is the people who will fight you putting your boundaries up the most are the people who used you.
Yeah, can you say that again, please? Because I think that is so crucial.
Yeah. So the people who will have the biggest issue with you not being a people pleaser anymore are the people who got the most out of you being a people pleaser. And those are really people that you do not want in your life. So you will lose people, but you'll lose the right people. You'll lose the people who were really taking advantage of you, who are using you, who, like, I used to have people who would say to other people, oh, why didn't you ask Noona? She'll do that. Like, not even for them, for someone else. And so suddenly it was like, you know, I wasn't just a people pleaser to this person, it was to their network as well, which is just unbelievable. Yeah. And, you know, there are people who will not like it. And the thing that as well that I will find is that so many of us develop a personality based on the validation that we get. So I got really validated by people saying that I was nice. And a question that I started asking myself is like, who would I be if that validation meant nothing to me? Yeah. Like if it really didn't matter to me if people thought if I was nice or not. I actually have turned out to be someone who doesn't want to do everything.
Yeah.
And I actually don't want to say yes all the time.
Yeah.
And so really asking yourself that question is, who would I be if I wasn't? So this comes up with victimhood as well. Like sometimes you can meet people who their identity has become of someone complaining, but it's because they get that validation of, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And that validation feels really good. And that's when you can start wondering, but what if that validation was there? Who would I be? That's quite a powerful question to ask yourself.
Absolutely. It's that external validation versus your own internal validation, right? Yeah, that is so crucial. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I know, being a people pleaser also, I mean, God, we could go on forever, but also the whole victimhood thing. I've played that role as well.
Yep,
very,
me too.
very well.
I know it well.
Yeah, exactly. But if you can, just knowing what you know and the amount of knowledge and expertise that you have with the brain and how people respond, if you were to leave a message for women and men starting, and they know they're doing wrong. They can identify as people pleasers. They can identify as individuals that are not confident. Where do they start? What's the message that you can leave for them?
Yeah. The first thing that I would say is just go easy on yourself. Like, don't try. You've had a PhD of being who you are today. Take it easy. Change one tiny little thing. And it could just be one word that you don't say. Maybe you just don't use the word disgusting for a week. Maybe you just look at yourself in the mirror and smile and just appreciate yourself. Start really small, and it's the small things done consistently that will have the biggest amount of momentum and impact.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I've loved this conversation so much.
Thank you so much. I feel like we're going to have like a part 2.
Yes, absolutely.
But thank you. And thank you so much for joining us today. And we'll be back. Thank you. And thank you to everyone. As usual, you will find us on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. Thank you. Thank you for joining us at Breaking the Cycle. If today's conversation resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, or share this episode with someone who really needs it. Remember, breaking free isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Keep showing up, keep doing the work, and trust that transformation is possible.